Hi guys, Shauna, and today on Sewing with Schwinn, I'm going to show you the first pattern hack for the basic t-shirt pattern. If you're brand new to sewing a t-shirt and you've never sewn one before, check out my other videos where I show you exactly how to sew a basic tee to get started. And once you've done that and you're comfortable, then let's get going with our hacking, shall we? So what is a pattern hack? A pattern hack simply means we're taking one pattern and we're going to alter it in some way, cut it up, whatever, and create something completely different with it. It's one of my favorite things to do. One, it keeps you from buying a ton of patterns, even though I appreciate the support. But we're going to just take this t-shirt pattern and make tons of different looks with it, which is so fun and easy to do. And it really lets your creativity just run wild, which is a lot of fun. So I'm going to walk you through all of the alterations that are needed, and these alterations can be done on any size pattern, from child size on up through women's sizes, so don't worry if you don't have a kid to make it on, even though I make a lot of mine for my kids. But I do tend to sew for myself as well from time to time, so you can do this for any size. And we are going to just dive right in. The only thing you're going to need to grab is a t-shirt pattern to get started, okay? Let's do this.
Okay, so I'm starting with my front bodice piece, and I'm just going to mark the new seam that we're going to be sewing the shoulder ruffle into. It doesn't have to be any kind of exact measurement here. I'm just curving from the underarm up through the shoulder. And then I'm going to make a mark on here of where I want the ruffle piece to end. And I'm going to go ahead and measure that line, and for me that's 10 inches, so I'm going to make a note of that. You're going to do this to the front and back bodice piece. And then we're just going to cut these two apart because they're going to become two pattern pieces now. And when you're cutting them out of the fabric, you just want to make sure that you're adding seam allowance along the two edges that you've cut here. So I'm going to be adding seam allowance, adding a seam allowance to both of these edges. Okay, for the shoulder ruffle piece, we're going to be doing a half circle skirt piece for this. So we're going to do some math here. Just kidding. I go to Circle Skirt app by Hand London. All you have to do is enter in your measurements. For us, I'm doing 20 inches since I did 10 inches and it's front and back, so 20 inches total. Just go to the Circle Skirt app, you enter in the details you need, just Google it. Okay, now that we have all of the measurements that we need, we are going to draw a circle skirt or a half circle skirt. They're both drawn the same way. A half circle skirt is only cut on one fold line. And you'll notice here from my first measurements, I actually measured this out as if I was going to do a full circle skirt for the ruffle, but then I changed my mind. And so the initial one has a small arc, and then the arc magically becomes larger because I switched to a half circle skirt. Just ignore that. To get started, you need two lines, straight lines really. I'm using the bottom edge of the paper, and then I drew a straight line here. And then using my radius mark amount that the app gave me, I'm just making little marks all the way along, keeping my ruler in the corner where the two lines intersect. And doing these little lines, it just makes it so that when I'm connecting them and making my semicircle, I know it's nice and even. If you had a really large protractor, I think that's what they're called. Anyway, you could do this, compass, that's what they are, not protractor. If you had a really big compass, you could totally just do it with that, but none of them ever come big enough, so we're just drawing them out freehand. So I'm doing that, and then I'm doing the exact same thing for my hemline of my sleeve. And I just kind of picked an amount of how long I wanted the widest part of my sleeve to be, which I think for mine was 10 inches. Gosh, I don't even remember now. And I'm trying really hard to look at the ruler. Anyway, you decide how long you want it, and you're drawing your hemline the exact same way you did the radius line. And then after drawing all of your dots, you'll connect the dots. And then we're just going to cut this out. Okay, so now we've got our piece, which, ta-da, magically larger arc. I know, I told you. Okay, so we need to shape the sleeve a little bit because we want it to become kind of tapered. And you can see I'm kind of making a little mark here at the bottom of where I want that to be. And then I'm gonna fiddle around my ruler for a little bit, trying to decide the best way to draw this curve. But this is not like an exact science to this. We're just trying to shape what the curve should be. So I end up just winging it. I'm starting at the larger side because I want where I'm cutting along the fold is going to be the widest part of the sleeve. So I know I want that to remain as wide as possible. But then as far as where it tapers down, I just want it to taper down into the seam. So it's going to come to kind of like a point down at the end. So I totally just ditched the ruler and go ahead and start cutting this. And you'll kind of see the shape that I'm making this at. And I know this is like such a legit tutorial here because I'm just winging it, but really you can just wing this. Basically what you want is a wide top and a narrow bottom, and I've decided that this narrow bottom is not quite narrow enough, so I'm going to trim a little bit more off. But you want to keep the curve on the outside as fluid as possible so it keeps its wavy shape when it becomes the ruffle. Okay, so this is looking a lot better. We got this nice narrow seam that's going to easily go right into our seam allowance, and then the wide part is the top of our shoulder. Okay, next we're going to cut out our fabric or pattern, I guess. And to do this, the only thing I'm going to show you, even though we are going to cut out all of our pieces, is cutting out the bodice here. And remember, we cut our bodice, the front and back, the same way, but when I'm doing it, I didn't retrace my pattern, so I'm just going to be eyeballing, adding my seam allowance along this cut edge. So I'm not cutting straight to the edge of the pattern, since I need to add that 3/8 seam allowance when I'm sewing those two pieces back together. And just remember that you're going to be doing this for the front, the back, and those two other pieces that were cut off of this. So the shoulder piece, we want to call that. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces cut out and ready to go. We got our neckband here. We've got two of our sleeve ruffle pieces. We have two long sleeves in this case, our two shoulder pieces, and then the front and back bodice piece. And we're going to start sewing this together now. So we're going to open up our front bodice piece here. And then we're going to be opening up our back bodice piece as well. And we are just going to sew these two together at the shoulders. Okay, now that our bodice is sewn together at the shoulders, we're going to press that seam towards the back bodice. Now we're going to take our sleeve ruffle here and match the center of the sleeve ruffle with the shoulder seam. And then we're just going to match the rest in place along the front and then along the back bodice. And if you want here, this is where you can baste the ruffle piece in place. I don't, it's just the risk I'm willing to take while sewing, but it does make it a little easier if you want to. So then we're going to take our shoulder pieces here and just sew them at the shoulders. Okay, with those sewn together at the shoulders, we're just going to open those up flat. Again, seam allowance towards the back. I know there's no clear right front or back on these because they're the same, but just decide, and you should have a left and a right at this point as well. And then we're going to take back the bodice that we had set aside, basted or not basted. We're going to take this side piece and we're just going to match it up to that same, like right on top of the ruffle. So along here, I start matching up my curved edge here, which is a little difficult, and then I decided to go striped, which makes it even more difficult, and my stripes do not end up matching it perfectly. And I'm okay with that. I don't really regret using stripes because you can never go wrong using stripes, but it was a little difficult. So we're just gonna match this up all the way along the edge here. And once that's all pinned in place, we're just gonna sew this in place right along this edge. Okay, now that that's done, you should see that you have this nice little shoulder ruffle all sewn into our bodice. And as you can see, it's also like a full bodice again, which is great. So we're gonna do the exact same thing to this other side now in really fast motion. Enjoy. Okay, with that all sewn, we are going to be matching our right sides together so that we can sew from the sleeve edge up to the armpit and then down the side. We're gonna do that for both sides. Okay, we have our mostly finished garment now. We just have to hem the sleeves and the bottom and put on a neckband. If only everything was just that easy.
Hey guys, we did it! First hack done! Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss the other upcoming 5 pattern hacks for this t-shirt pattern. Okay? We'll see you next time. Bye!